to nowhere except retirement. Those statistics must inform these discussions as well, because far too often both the aggrieved officer and the public suffer simultaneously. The officer is entitled to expeditious justice and a reasonably fast opportunity to vindicate himself and prove his innocence so that he can be reinstated to serve the people. Many times officers may be the subject of malicious complaints that have no merit whatsoever, but they are suspended and they remain suspended. The aggrieved citizen who feels that they may be wronged is equally entitled to have that officer disciplined in accordance with law in an expeditious manner if the officer is guilty. In the old days, the disciplinary procedure, Chairman, was used as a tool to be manipulated to avoid promotion. So that if promotion interviews were coming up, it was not uncommon to see a rush of letters of warning and charges being preferred under delegated powers to certain officers who did not find favor with the hierarchy in the police service. So that if you were not a blue-eyed boy of the police commissioner, you will find that you will face a letter of warning or a disciplinary charge on the eve of promotion interviews. That way you remain suspended and you are kept out of the promotion interview, thereby barring you from being considered for promotion. That continued for a very long time in this country. In fact, it was a matter that was noted in the celebrated report prepared by Professor Selwyn Ryan and Professor John Laguerre at the Center for Ethnic Studies in 1981. And many of the findings in that report, as it pertains to the commissions in this country, remain relevant even today. I ask that you pay heed to it, sir, and those recommendations that perhaps have not been implemented almost 2 decades on, that we perhaps revisit them, and those that remain relevant to our society and our police service be revisited with renewed vigor. In the area of discipline, I think it serves the police service well, because it is a source of disincentive to performing police officers, that colleagues who are suspended on full pay may be able to continue to manipulate a system that facilitates and is conducive to manipulation and be reinstated after 10 years, and in some cases leapfrog over those who they left behind who are grinding and serving in the trenches. The 2 I's are important in the police service and are equally important for your commission, Mr. Chairman: independence and integrity. Independence of this process, and I'm very grateful that the Honorable Leader of the Opposition has sent a very experienced parliamentarian who will no doubt bring to these deliberations meaningful contributions and insights. This process is one that must yield benefit for the wider good and public interest of Trinidad and Tobago. I hope that we dispassionately approach the question of reform, understanding and acknowledging firstly that the system is not working.
That's right.
The system has not been working because there are gaps in the accountability measures for the police service, starting from the very top. Without accountability and without proper line responsibility, there is bound to be a crevice here and there that things can fall into. We need a proper system of accountability. You are charged with the mandate of developing the roadmap to get us there, sir. And the country is very fortunate to have a chairman with such a distinguished record, someone who has served as an independent senator, a newspaper columnist, and indeed by professional training, a criminologist of note and repute. I would not want to compare you to those who have come from foreign jurisdictions and who have contributed far less to the discourse in Trinidad and Tobago. And without naming anyone like Professor Matrovsky, I say that we have our own Professor Deosaran, who would now lead the deliberations for police service reform, and I dare say will do a far better job. With those few words, I thank you for your invitation and take the opportunity to wish you the very best in these deliberations, sir. Thank you very much.
You were going very, very good until the end. I got a little nervous.
Yes, sure.
AG, I'll simply thank you now, but you'll be hearing much more from us. Thank you very, very much for coming. But listening to you and what I have said earlier on, and at the meetings of the Police Service Commission itself, and at the meeting of the Police Service Commission itself, and as I listen to you, sometimes I feel that the Police Service Commission is like a no-teeth Rottweiler. We have a big voice through the Constitution, but when you try to implement the constitutional mandate, you find yourself trying to go through sets of tiger wires. You can't go through to implement some of the things you were speaking about. I want to thank you very much for the encouragement, and I agree with you. Ms. Donna Cox's presence here is of no mean significance, and so too is the presence of the Honorable Minister of Public Administration. Ladies and gentlemen, before I introduce the Minister of Public Administration to make some remarks, after which, of course, Ms. Donna Cox would be invited to do so as well, I want to introduce to you the Director of the Police Service Commission Secretariat, the hard-working director. Am I right, or am I?
So far, you're going good.
He's the support staff. We have our legal advisor, Mr. Martin Samuel, who has recently joined us. And I thought I would mention Dr. Rahi's support. And another issue, this is not a complaint. I'm dealing with structure and the momentum to move forward in the lines of which the Attorney General mentioned. When I came in here, we had less than half of our staff complement. How could you deliver the things that we need to deliver when half of your staff, critical staff in terms of appraisal, evaluation, monitoring, not on board? So we had to double the effort with the minimal staff we had. And the fact is, we have no jurisdiction as a Commission Attorney General, Minister of Public Administration, to look after staffing for ourselves, the competence we need, the job specs. That is done by another agency, and ironically enough, which is something we have to look at, that agency, the DPA office, has no place in the Constitution in terms of jurisdiction over the Police Service Commission. That jurisdiction, in our view, extends only to the Public Service Commission. So we have to look at all these things and make sure that those who are empowered, requested, mandated to perform certain functions for the public interest are properly configured and supported, both constitutionally and administratively, as we should. So thank you for your presence. Thank you. And if history is of any value and what you have been doing recently with us, we look forward to your continued cooperation. On another occasion, in a more appropriate forum, I too will speak about your performance and your experience and your own contribution to this country. But today is the Public Police Service Commission's day, and perhaps, in fact, if you look at Ms. Cox, Ms. Minister, the Attorney General on my right, and in the center, an independent person, you may never get a good picture like this in a long, long time. This is a rare combination, so you could feast on it for the time being. It's like Halley's Comet. But it tells you how the country should move, if I should just belabor the point. This is what we will need sometimes, critical times. We know we have a constitution with opposition and government, but there are critical times in a country's movement towards improving public safety especially, that we should have occasions like this. You agree with me? Madam Minister, may I invite you to make a few remarks, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't intend to be very long because, in my view, I would like to listen today more than actually speaking. Let me first of all thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the invitation to be part of this roundtable and for this initiative. I want to commend you. What we have noted in the Ministry of Public Administration is that if we are going to move forward, all the various agencies, there must be dialogue among the various agencies. I think for too long in the public service, when we speak to reform, we want to do it in an isolated and fragmented way. What we recognize today is that if all the agencies could come together and we can have meaningful dialogue, in which case we will be able to clarify all our roles and responsibilities and appreciate how we must come together. What are the linkages? What are the communication channels so that we can solve problems? I think very important here is that as you spoke extensively about the legislative reform package that was piloted through the Parliament, and that was done on a bipartisan, using a bipartisan approach. I want to say, however, having some discussions with you, Mr. Chairman, since taking office as Minister of Public Admin, it is clear that the objectives envisaged by that bipartisan approach has not been realized to date. And therefore, all the issues that we speak to, and I think the Attorney General is quite right, sometimes we put a lot of nice ideas into legislation, but in no way do we develop the systems and the processes to ensure that they can be executed and effected. And I think today is a time for us to probably take a look at how we can effectively implement many of those measures and many of those objectives, finally achieve those objectives as envisaged by that legislation in terms of police service reform. As you know, we are talking about public service reform. The police service itself has embarked on reform, but we would like to ensure that when we speak to reform, that it is harmonious and that there is not conflict when we embark on reform ourselves in the public service. Might I say that I think one of the issues I am very interested in this through this dialogue is for us to appreciate more in terms of what will be the performance management system and how we are going to design that performance management system to ensure that we encourage the right behavior and the right culture. Because no amount of legislative reform will achieve these objectives unless we have encouraged the right behaviors and we have encouraged the right culture. And that is not specific only to the police service or the Police Service Commission, but in terms of the public service reform. So therefore, these are some of the issues that we are grappling with right now in the Ministry of Public Admin. And in fact, we have also formed a team comprising the Ministry of Public Admin, the DPA's office, the Public Service Commission, and what we call our PMCD. And it is our intention that in the future, Mr. Chairman, that we will be widening that group to include the Police Service Commission and the Teaching Service Commission so that we can comprehensively address reform. Having said that, however, I'm very interested in knowing how we would move forward through this dialogue in terms of when you do map your roadmap and you derive that roadmap in terms of how we strengthen the governance framework and achieve the accountability. Important for us to understand, and I want to make this point, as we speak to dialogue among the various government agencies, at no point in time will we be interfering with the independence of these institutions. The meritocracy that the Constitution envisaged, and we intend to continue to adhere to at all points in time. But there is a need for us to come together, all agencies, government and independent institutions, such as the Police Service Commission, to ensure that we achieve these objectives. Mr. Chairman, you spoke extensively about the administrative part in terms of the role of the DPA's office, the role of the Police Service Commission, the role of the Public Service Commission. And I want to say that that is high on our agenda, and we will be continuing discussions where that matter is concerned. We are also very much committed to going forward with any legislation, any changes and amendments to the regulatory framework, including the civil service regulations. And if that may be, we are prepared to go forward, but in a timely way. I think very important here, Mr. Chairman, is timeliness of achieving the objectives that we have set on. So with those few words, I would like to say, I hope that this dialogue, represented here by all the stakeholders in this room, that we will be able to achieve something at the end of the day, and that we will be able to move forward. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
All right. Thank you, Madam. Before I introduce Ms. Cox, I think I better put on the record the terms of reference agreed by through the Prime Minister and the Attorney General and the Police Service Commission. Some examples of the terms of reference that the review team will undertake. One of our difficulties difficulties is the bureaucratic strangulation under which we have been and continue to suffer. We want to escape from that, to perform. So we do not wish to be kept back in any undue bureaucratic exercise anymore. And that was one of the major outcomes of the meeting we had with the Prime Minister, the Attorney General, and the Minister of National Security, and the Police Service Commission. In fact, it was agreeable that we have to disconnect ourselves from the DPA office because the constitutional mandate we have and the differences between this commission and the other service commissions are fundamental and significant. And you cannot have one umbrella to suit all participants in the same way as you have had. And that is one of the major objectives of the exercise, to satisfy